are you today? My name is Oriana Brueggemann. I'm a mortgage broker based in Squamish, British Columbia, and I specialize in commercial real estate financing. Today, I have a very special guest with us. Mike, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So we are today here with Mike from Bluewater Concepts, who specializes in passive home construction. And as some of you may know, I have been researching about what is passive homes, what does it imply, what is Squamish with all that. And I was very excited to find Mike and to have the opportunity to get to know more about all this. So Mike, thank you for being here and giving us the opportunity to learn more about you, about Bluewater Concepts, and about what is passive home construction. So why don't we start exactly there? Why don't you tell us more about you, the company, and how all these got together and why you got into the passive home building?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm originally from Ontario. I grew up working in a family construction company. My father had a construction company growing up. I kind of got my start on construction sites around 8 years old, kind of pushing a broom, working with dad, weekends, summer holidays, Christmas break. Always had a passion for construction. Worked my way up through the family business and then went to school for construction engineering and architectural technology, which was a program primarily based on a lot of structural engineering, a bit of architectural design, lots of AutoCAD, lots of home design, things like that. And then after college, I ended up taking a road trip out to BC and then just didn't go back to Ontario. Worked for a timber framer for a little while, did a lot of design for him and building, and then decided to go out on my own about 12.
Always in Squamish? Sorry.
No, yeah, no. A little bit in the interior. So I landed in Rossland, which was kind of home base for about 6 years. So I spent 6 years in Rossland. Yeah, kind of doing the ski bum life and then also doing a lot of building on the side, sort of staying busy doing that. And then I met a lady and she was from the coast. Yeah. And she wanted to go to law school, so I'm not a big city person, so Squamish was kind of the perfect launching off point to be able to go to the city and still be in a small town. And that's when Bluewater came about. So I got to Squamish about 5 years ago, and Bluewater's been kind of growing ever since.
There's always a lady to be blamed.
Yeah, it's usually.
But I'm very happy that happened because they will have this opportunity. And then, Mike, if you can tell us about Bluewater and this evolution from construction into what we call today passive home building.
Sure.
How do you do the transition, or why did you click into this, and why your interest into making out of Bluewater Concept one company with the goal to go passive home building?
Yeah, sure. It was actually a client that came to me when I first arrived in Squamish, wanted to build a house in a neighborhood called Crumpet Woods, which is a neighborhood here in Squamish. And one of the first things they asked me was if I knew much about Passive House. And at the time, that was almost 6 years ago now, I didn't know much about it at the time. Kind of took my meeting, went back, did a bit of research, and I think about 3 months later, I was enrolled in the Passive House Consultant or Designer course, which is we can get to that later, but basically you need to have someone like that with that certification involved to build a passive house. So I jumped in head first, realized that I kind of loved everything about it. It was a very systemized way to build a super efficient building. It kind of played on what I always wanted to have, which was a way to prove how well you've built something. It almost gives you a report card at the end of the project. If you build it this way and you measure the air tightness and you pay attention to details and you truly care about what you're building, you kind of get rewarded at the end of the certification and you can show the client that the money was worth it. The other part of it too was I saw what we call the energy step code. So it's basically British Columbia's building code is changing. And so they're setting out benchmarks for all municipalities across British Columbia to be able to achieve a certain level of efficiency in their buildings. And it's a step code. So they're setting those benchmarks step by step, and we're going to be at what's called Energy Step Code Level 5 by 2032, so 12 years from now.
Yeah, that's sooner than, yeah.
Yeah, and Energy Step Code Level 5 is almost the same thing as Passive House. There's a few very small changes or a few differences, but it's basically the exact same thing.
And before we get into those details, why don't we explain a little bit to our public and the people that is following us, what is exactly a passive home, right? Because we keep saying passive home, and it's a topic that is getting more and more mentioned or more popular, but exactly when you have two houses, one to each other, what makes this one passive and what makes this one a standard house?
Of course, yeah. So a passive house is essentially, it's not going to look anything different. It's going to look like if you put one side by side, a code-built home and a passive certified building, it's really not going to look that different. A passive house is really just an over-insulated, super airtight building. So it's incredibly energy efficient. In certain climates, you still need a major heat source, but we're building one here in Squamish, and the only heat source is a very small post heater, so a very small little heater in the HRV. There's no other heat source inside the whole building. So, instead of having a big furnace that's sucking energy and, using natural gas or electricity to heat your house is so airtight that it keeps the heat in, and the HRV, the heat recovery ventilation unit, which is essential to passive house, basically moves fresh air throughout the building, takes air outside, moves it to the inside, and then when it's expelling the air outside, it takes, sometimes up to 97% of the heat from that air and puts it back into the building. So once that heat's inside the building, aside from like leaving your doors wide open, it stays, very comfortable.
So I'm guessing this is long-term savings and long-term reduction in the carbon footprint that a family does to the ecosystem, and once again, the savings. Yeah. Then we have to talk a little bit about certifications, about the process behind. When an investor is with the mindset of I want to go passive building, what will be like you take these 3 or 4 things into account in your research when going there? Like if I'm an investor, I have a new land and I want to go passive building, what do I do? Mm-hmm. Where do I go from there?
Yeah. I think, so the first and most important thing I think is building the team with professionals that have experience. I think passive house has become a bit of a buzzword lately, and there's a lot of people sort of, for lack of a better term, jumping on the bandwagon. I think you definitely want to build a team of professionals that know what they're doing and have experience in projects of the size that you're looking to do, and truly understand what it means to build a certified passive house building. Passive house is in the name, but that's really just a certification. It's a certification. Like you can build, they're building multi-unit residential buildings in Vancouver, like a MERB, multi-stories to the passive house standard. So it doesn't have to be a single family house. It can be a large development. You can build schools, things like that.
Awesome. Schools, restaurants, like all the commercial buildings as well can comply with that.
Yeah.
And who certifies a passive home? Or the certifications you mentioned, like who is the institution or the body that is behind all the process of certifying a builder and a construction as passive building?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that ties into building the team properly. If you're looking to start a project, it would be, so you need a couple certified people involved in a project. You need to have a passive house certified consultant or designer. And that's the person that's basically working directly. So sometimes that could be an architect. Sometimes in our case, it can be an actual design build company or a builder, or it's just someone that just focuses on passive house. But those people basically take the set of plans and put it into an energy modeling software called PHPP, which is the Passive House Planning Package. And it's a very powerful energy modeling software. Basically takes everything into account, calculates the thermal bridging, the overall heat loads, and spits out whether or not your design as it sits, whether or not it could be reached the certification level. So you need a Passive House consultant or designer, and then you also need a Passive House certifier, who is, there's not a ton in Canada right now, but that's basically the person that overlooks all the documentation from the project.
How do you get certified? When you say that there's not a lot of people that can really put their stamp on that, what does it take to be certified and to go through all this process?
Right. So I believe to be able to be an actual Passive House certifier, there's a certain level of amount of projects that you need to be involved in that reach the certification. And you would have to be involved in those projects as a consultant or a designer, I believe. Yeah, and so because Passive House is kind of just gaining steam in North America, and in Europe it's been sort of par for the course for a while, but there's not a ton of people that have that experience and then also stepped up to the plate to actually become certifiers. But I do believe that's going to change relatively quickly.
And is there like a guideline of how many people certified you have to have in your team? Because I think this makes a big difference. We were chatting a little bit before doing the video, all the investment that you have created around Bluewater to have actually a staff that is all the time being up to date with the certifications. Is that something that is mandatory, or is Bluewater core value of actually giving all the solution and making sure that all the chain of process has a professional that knows what they're doing there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a bit of both. So here at Bluewater, I'm a Passive House consultant and also a certified tradesperson. So that's another certification that you can get. Once the construction actually starts, aside from your consultant team, so aside from having a Passive House consultant or designer involved, you don't technically need to have anyone building the building that is actually certified. So Passive House is out of Darmstadt, Germany, and that's where the head office is. And so they've created a certified Passive House tradesperson course so that people can go get certified, understand the fundamentals, understand the importance of detailing and airtightness and everything else that goes into creating a Passive House. And since they've done that, I've seen the benefit of having our staff certified to be able to then work on a project and truly understand the importance of not poking holes in the building or
not leaving any loose piece behind, right? Like all the team is connected to the goal. Right?
Everyone's working in the same direction.
And we have mentioned, I have heard you have mentioned a couple of times about the technology behind making a house passive, like with the different heating, the tightness. It's like any set of technology or new raw material supplies that are implied or need to be used when building passive houses?
Right. Yeah, so there's the first one, the most important one is an HRV. I think people are becoming more familiar with them because in a code built home, you would put an HRV in now. So it's a heat recovery ventilation unit. So if you think about you're building a passive house that's the criteria is 0.6 air changes per hour or less, which is an incredibly tight building. If your building is that tight, you need to have supplemental air. You have to have something moving fresh air into the building and then taking stale air out of the building. So you have an HRV, that's one of them. You have triple pane windows. So Passive House certified windows, you don't necessarily have to use a certified window, but it makes it much easier. And they're often, well, they're always triple pane, thermal bridge free, often fiberglass or wood. Luckily in British Columbia, there's probably 7 or 8 different window manufacturers now, which is nice.
But that's new, right?
Yeah.
Before everything was pretty much imported.
Was mainly from Europe.
That's a good sign. Yeah. That's a good sign.
For sure.
That we're going in the right direction.
Exactly.
And Mike, I have a question for you. You choose Squamish to be home. I choose Squamish to be home, right? So I would like to get a little bit into what is the local information. Where are we in Squamish in passive home building? What is the today's and how do you see the future around these constructions, the developments, and the step code when it comes to building passive home?
I would describe it as definitely being in its infancy at the moment. There's more and more awareness now, but there's not a ton of information about it. I think the district is starting to get on board. We just declared a climate emergency recently, so I think The mayor, her team, the building department, the planning department is seeing the value and starting to push buildings towards being more efficient, obviously because of the energy step code as well. As far as I know, our project and one other project by LTO Developments in town are the only projects that are actually going for certification at the moment. But I would suspect that that's going to change pretty quickly. The interactions that I've had with the building department in town and the planning department is that they're very eager to learn, and they're very eager to do what they can to accommodate these buildings, because you often have thicker walls, or you have, it's
a lot of change.
It's a lot of change, and it's new for them. So I think some municipalities are having a challenging time, but from what I've gathered here, they're on board, which is good. So
perfect. Mike, I think to start wrapping up the interview, we have gone through some questions about what is passive home building and all the things that is implied. Is there something that I have missed to ask and that you consider it's important to share with our public and with all the process that we're doing about educating or what is passive home building? Is there anything that I'm missing that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I think a couple points is one, the myth that I hear when I talk to a lot of clients, or what they feel is a limitation, is that the building doesn't need to be like this boring box. Passive houses can kind of look like anything. It's a lot more efficient to build a square and kind of dress it up from the outside, but we can, or anyone that's involved in the passive house world can probably design you a building that's going to meet certification that you actually like the look of aesthetically. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind. And two is that it doesn't cost that much more. If you're working with a team that has experience in passive house building, both on the design end of things, estimating, and then actually detailing and building it, it shouldn't be that much of a premium. In multifamily, large buildings, that I'm not involved in that world as much, but they're kind of bringing the premium down below like 5% premium to build a certified passive building. And then in the residential world, we're kind of telling clients that you're looking at between 10 and 20, aiming for that sort of 15% mark on a premium on a regular building.
Well, it's a good investment. I moved 1 year ago to Squamish, and I think I'm already dated. Right. I will need to talk to my husband, see if we sell the house and we come to Bluewater Concepts and start from scratch. All the process. That's great. Mike Van Capelle, did I get your last name right? I was a little bit shy too.
It's
this is great. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, no problem.
And guys, Squamish, passive building, if you are thinking to be in the future, don't be dated. Make sure you reach out to Bluewater Concepts. I'm sure you are going to be able to find them. If by any reason you couldn't, make sure you reach out to me and I will connect you. Bye-bye.